Time to get started, everybody. It's 6 o'clock on the dot. We'll get started with our wonderful candidate forum. Hi, my name is Andy Hochleitner. I am with the Central Washington Home Builders Association. And along with our organization, the Yakima Association of Realtors, we are here together to bring you this wonderful candidate forum. I'm happy to introduce our candidates. First up, we have LaDon Lindy. If you guys want to just do a quick little hello. And then Steve Saunders, Kyle Curtis, and Amanda McKinney. Full disclosure, we invited everyone to attend as part of this open forum. And I'll get started with the rules for tonight. Candidates, please tell us a little bit about yourself, your district that you seek to represent, and why you're running for county commissioner. What are the reasons why we should vote for you?
Very good. Again, my name is LaDon Lindy. I'm Yakima County Commissioner. I've been in this position for 2 years now. I'm seeking re-election. My background, I am a graduate of Granger High School, living now currently in the Sunnyside area, where I've been, with my wife Sandra for 39 years. We have 6 children and 11 grandchildren. My background up until becoming commissioner is all in private business. I was a dairy farmer for a number of years until we sold that in 2006. So I have over 20 years experience running a business. I think that's valuable for Yakima County because agriculture is the core of our economy. I have that background, but I've had experience also during that time being on the board of directors for the Dairy Federation, so spent a lot of time in Olympia lobbying for ag and ag causes. After that, I spent 15 years working at the hospital in Sunnyside, worked with personnel, labor law, compliance, and the medical staff office. On top of that, I spent a good amount of time volunteering for my church, for which I'm a lay pastor. My priorities really at this moment are public safety. This is the item that I hear more than anything else as I walk through our communities and talk to people. They're concerned. They worry about gangs. They worry about violent crime. They want to feel safe in their communities. And so I'm dedicated to that and providing resources to our law enforcement. In the era of defunding the police, I'm all about fully funding our police officers. Other issues include our homeless population, drug addiction, which is a significant issue in our county, and helping to make local government more responsive to people, making people be able to get answers sooner, get response from the county staff. But I appreciate your support.
Thank you, sir. All right, Mr. Saunders.
Good evening. Really excited to be here with you all tonight. I'm Steve Saunders, and I'd like to introduce myself and ask for your vote to elect me as your next county commissioner for the Lower Valley District 3. I'm a husband, grandfather, and a mentor. I served as a ranger in the Green Beret, retired from the Army as a command sergeant major. I've served as a trooper and a town marshal and extensive emergency management, disaster preparedness experience, and a National Guard liaison to 20 counties in Washington State. The history of public service has given me an extensive real-world experience in structures of leadership and management where lives were always on the line. Why I want to earn your vote is I'm a no-nonsense, no-excuse type of guy who is engaged and concerned in many of the issues our community is dealing with, just like you. My passion is public safety, keeping government off our lands and out of our pockets, and calling them on their general overreach in many aspects of our lives. I believe our local government spending needs to be focused in the right direction and in the hands of respect to law enforcement, education, and our children. We must stop frivolous waste. We need funds for programs that actually remedy issues that our community is facing. I've built teams that work collaboratively to get the right people in the right place to make the best decisions that affect our community. I believe in my faith, the Constitution, and getting things right. Now, I do not have all the answers, but I will do my best to listen, educate, and help our community move in the right direction of freedom, keeping our liberties, basic physical responsibility, and ensuring justice for all. Look forward to working with my fellow elected representatives, organizations, and volunteer groups in Yakima. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, Mr. Curtis, your turn.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. First, I want to thank the home builders and the Yakima Realtors for hosting tonight's forum. It's a great opportunity for us to discuss very important issues. And I want to thank everyone who's watching online as well as who's attending in person. My name is Kyle Curtis, and I'm running to be your Yakima County District 2 Commissioner. District 2 includes the city of Yakima, city of Union Gap, and a little bit of Terrace Heights. That's the new redistrict. I'm born and raised in White Swan out on the Yakima Indian Reservation. I graduated from Eisenhower High School, and then I jumped over to attend the University of Washington and graduated from the business school. 5 years ago, I came back home to work in our family businesses. I've served as a controller, assistant controller, and also currently as a CFO and vice president. I've overseen budgets, finances, payroll, human resources, and insurance. For the last 5 years since being back home, I have been heavily involved in our community. I've served in various appointed capacities. I've served 2 years on our Yakima County Homeless Coalition. I've served 3 years on our Yakima County Planning Commission, and I've also served on our City of Yakima Community Integration. Through this time, I have been exposed to a lot of pertinent issues that we are facing in our county, and I've had the opportunity to discuss these issues and get really deep into the weeds. And I am running today because I believe I can bring experience, I can bring proven leadership, and I can bring accessible leadership to the county level. The top 3 issues that I have been hearing as I go door to door is public safety, addressing our homelessness, and attainable and affordable housing. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. McKinney.
Hi, I'm Amber McKinney, current Yakima County Commissioner for District 1. I've got a wonderful family, most of which is here with me tonight. My husband David and our son Duke, and our daughter is a freshman now in college, Stephen. We have deep roots, my family, and my husband and I, in central and eastern Washington, in the farming community. My husband and I have been very involved in community service, having spent over 18 years in Rotary, which has allowed me the opportunity to meet a lot of people with lots of different perspectives and to really see the needs, which ultimately drove me to work to arrive at the decision to be commissioner just less than 2 short years ago. My real estate background in finance for 23 years, has prepared me extremely well. Similar to what Mr. Curtis has mentioned, budgeting, insurance, development, property rights, the information that I've been able to retain and learn in the last 23 years and cutting through bureaucratic red tape that is involved in government through the most regulated industry in the United States was incredibly helpful. It meant that I didn't have to ask a lot of questions of staff and rather be more proactive, which is what I promised. So when I was elected 2 years ago, I committed to being responsive, I committed to being proactive, results-driven, and I also committed to being transparent. So we have an awful lot of opportunities on our website now since I joined the commission to be able to see our meetings, to interact with commissioners. If you email me, I email you back. If you call me, I return your call. And yes, I text. So it is incredibly important to me to keep working on the incredible issues that we have facing us. And property rights are among those. We'll be talking, I'm sure, about the well metering system, but I want to point out that I immediately set out to work with the Association of Realtors, the Farm Bureaus, and the Home Builders Association who are sponsoring this event to work on YCWRS, to amend it, to try to make it more amenable to our property right owners, and to eventually replace it with something with stakeholder buy-in. And I'm looking forward to continuing that hard work. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Alrighty guys, now that we've gotten to know you a little bit better, we're gonna get dive into a few more of those issues that you guys brought up. If you guys could highlight any major supporters or endorsements that maybe you have received in the community, as well as your affiliation to the Realtors and your current relationship that you've built with our organization, our sponsoring organizations, CW. Mr. Saunders?
Yes, I have been endorsed by the Yakima Realtors Association. We also just received the endorsement from the Washington State Farm Bureau. I'm also a commander of the Veteran Affordable Wars here in Yakima. I'm a member of the Yakima Warriors down in Toppenish. I have endorsements from every congressional candidate that was recently running, except for Mr. Polk, and have endorsements from Cindy Bird down in Tri-Cities, Joe Kent out in Vancouver, several others, just off the top of my head.
Great. All right, Mr. Curtis.
Yeah, so I have a few endorsements, and of course, being a new candidate, I'm always open to additional endorsements. So I want to thank the home builders for endorsing me, as well as the Yakima Realtors for the endorsement. I also received Washington State Farm Bureau endorsement, Yakima County Republicans, Nation Republicans, Log Cabin Republicans, and a lot of endorsements from former elected and current elected. I am proud to say that I've been endorsed by our current sitting commissioner, Ron Anderson. So very blessed with that. Is that better? All right. But yeah, those are my endorsements.
Great.
Also very proud to say that the Central Washington Home Builders Association and the Yakima Association of Realtors and the State Association of Realtors endorsement, which means a lot to me because that is, of course, my profession. So I take that to heart, as well as the Farm Bureau. And I might add, they have been wonderful partners to work with for these last 2 years. And there's a lot of incredible collaboration that goes on during the legislative session. So those partnerships are really key. Organizationally, I think I recently mentioned, but I've been a Rotarian for a little over almost 18, 19 years, which is where I met my husband. And have been on various boards for United Way to the YMCA, and really, again, lots of opportunities to get to know people in the community.
Great. Thank you. All right, Mr. Lindy.
Yes, first of all, I've been endorsed by the Lower Valley Association of Realtors, along with several of our legislators, Representative Defoe, Representative Chandler, Senator Honeyford, Senator Curtis King, Commissioner Ron Anderson, several of our mayors up and down the Yakima Valley, particularly in the Lower Valley, along with several members of school boards, many city councilmen and women, as well as several police chiefs throughout our district. In addition to that, I've got endorsement of many farmers and businessmen who have had experience with me and know me, and feel good about my integrity, my work ethic, and my ability to work on their behalf.
Great, thank you. All right, next question for tonight, we're going to talk about our current housing crisis. An issue that is so important to both our organization, but also the community at large. We are experiencing a housing crisis across the country, affecting both renters and buyers. Washington's vacancy is hovering around 5%, and Yakima County is further below the state average with approximately less than 1%. More than 75% of adults in Yakima view housing affordability as a problem, and 50% view it as a serious problem. What have you done, or what will you do, if elected, to review and make changes to county laws and practices to help address the challenges our community faces?
All right, and I think I get to go first. So first, I would say I look at this issue twofold. As far as the housing cost and the housing issue that we're facing, it is a supply and demand issue, but it's also a regulatory issue as well. On the supply and demand side, I, in the county role, would like to cut any red tape that can be cut to make the permitting process more streamlined, easier, and timelier to increase the housing supply. I think that cuts, the lead times there are always drastic, and that's usually the highest cost of any of our new builds. I would also say that housing is, you have to look at the housing crisis as a ladder. It's not just building apartments or just building nice big homes. You have to build all sorts of homes so that everyone in their walk of life can transition into new homes and make additional housing opportunities available for those moving in.
Thank you, sir. Ms. McKinney, your turn.
Minutes not enough. It's going to get worse. Interest rates continue to go up, as well as home values, unfortunately. But how to address it? And that is something I've been working very hard with for the last year to update, among other ordinances, our accessory dwelling unit code. And the reason why that's important is because there are opportunities for people to have accessory dwellings where they will earn income by renting out that additional unit, but they're also able to provide a more affordable unit for someone else. So I see that as a strong way where we can increase density and affordability without the increased cost. It is also absolutely working hard with the Home Builders Association of the Realtors advocating and lobbying in the legislature because Olympia continues to, through the building code add costs to the average home because of energy efficiency requirements. So we really need to remain vigilant, which I am, and look forward to those continued partnerships with those in the room.
Great, thank you. Mr. Lindy?
Yes, well, Commissioner McKinney stole a little bit of my thunder on there. In fact, we have concerns about the regulatory issues from the state. The green energy codes have added $30,000 to the cost of our homes within the last year or so. We have looked as a board to look at ways where we can streamline the regulation, make it easier. It's sometimes a little difficult when we fight back against the state side. One thing we are able to do as a county is invest in infrastructure. So we bring infrastructure to housing areas to help encourage development in those areas. So that's one positive thing we can do. Other than that, I think we need to continue to work with the legislature to see if we can cut back on some of those regulations. Also, I would say that, as home builders, the home builders group, I don't consider myself the subject matter on all issues. So if you have things that you see that will help the situation, I'm open to listen to those things.
Great, thank you so much for your response. Mr. Saunders?
Well, not yet a commissioner, but I received several phone calls today in regards to tax assessments that just came out. That is definitely, I converted a few of those to.
I got it.
And that's a big issue. The other issue is that once again, the mother-in-law dwellings, the accessory dwellings, those are a must. If you take families, the large families we have all jammed into one house, and you were to make that a rule against that, we would really have a homelessness problem here in the community. We must have alternate options for families to be able to support one another. Also, the permitting process is taking far too long, and in regards to getting that done, but there never seems to be a shortage of code enforcement to come and tell people what they can't do with their own properties, and that's not acceptable.
Thank you. Very important issues to all of us, so thank you for your responses, everyone. We'll dive a little bit more into a specific aspect of housing, homelessness. Yakima County has been hit hard by homelessness, and according to Washington State Department of Commerce, in 2021, the county spent more than $6.08 million on homeless-related programs. What objective measures of success are currently in place, in your opinion, that have made progress, and what are your plans to address specifically homelessness in this area? That's you, Ms. McKinney.
Oh.
Sorry.
Sometimes saying no to money. I think unfortunately we have a lot of policies out there that are perpetuating the issue. So one thing I can say that I was wholly against when we were going through our next plan was hotel vouchers. We have some great organizations that do reach out to people constantly, outreach, which is a requirement of their grants with us to try to get folks into treatment and into their facilities that offer supervision, but they also have rules. And one thing that we have, though, are organizations that will go around and offer hotel vouchers. Now, if you're someone who's sitting in a camp and you are addicted to drugs, you are less likely, I think, to want to go to a place that's going to tell you that you cannot do those drugs. It's unfortunate. And so we made a decision as a board, and I spoke up to bring it up. I said, we're not going to do hotel vouchers unless it's a case of domestic violence, because obviously we do not want to have any barriers to someone fleeing that situation, or to youth, so young people would not necessarily be appropriate to be in those positions. But we have to start saying no to some of these funds so that we can take control over how we're going to run things in Yakima County.
Thank you. Mr. Lindy.
Yes, it's interesting. We actually had this conversation with the Homeless Coalition here within the last week or two, and during this discussion, one of the things I asked the group was, how do we define success? It's not just an issue of pouring money into the problem. You need money, but we also need to be able to have benchmarks to show that we're actually making progress. Some of those include things like seeking treatment, getting them into treatment if we get them there. Things like helping them with job skills, with resumes, with training. In the end, what we're looking for, if we're curing a homeless problem, ultimately, it's not just changing their location or just putting a roof over their head. We actually have to change their condition so they can once again become self-sufficient, productive members of our society.
Great, thank you for your response.
Definitely always throwing more money at the problem is not the answer. I think families have a big role to play in this. If you have homeless children that are out in the streets, and you still have a place in your home, ways to maybe incentivize those family members to help their loved ones in their own home where they can get into care. I know that can be burdensome at times, but it's also burdensome. I've seen it in the veterans community where I've had veterans that are struggling, staying in one of our spare bedrooms and struggling with substance abuse and things like that. But what was a big benefit for them is they had me there to be able to say, take them to counseling, take them to treatment, encourage them to get the help they need. So it's not always big government that's the solution to these problems. It really comes down to communities, families, and your brokers.
Great, thank you. Mr. Curtis.
So I had the opportunity to serve on the Yakima County Homeless Coalition for 2 years, appointed representing the business interests. And I will say that it was an absolute eye-opener to me of how vast this issue is and how complex homelessness is. And also opened my eyes to how bureaucratic it has become. There's a whole industry that flows around homelessness monies. For me, what we need to do, and things are already in motion, is we need to make sure that we're being accountable to these funds. What we don't do a great job of is tracking the services. When someone enters into a service, if they're double dipping or if they're moving around, there's really no great coordinated way to track that. Another thing I will say is the point in time survey was just released a few weeks back. And while we have 670 folks experiencing homeless, we have a 14% increase in chronic homelessness. In chronic homelessness, that's no good for Yakima County.
Thank you. Wonderful responses. I want to take a quick 5-second break here for you guys. Just go ahead and take a breather and breathe in and make an announcement to anyone who may have come in. The next question, and I believe that is going to be back to you, Mr. Lindy. So we talked a little bit about the county budget broadly. So this question specifically is about how would you prioritize county spending? And do you believe that the county needs to generate more revenue? And if so, how would you implement any changes?
Well, revenue is a tough question because we are limited in our sources. So I think what we have to look at really as a county board is how we best prioritize that spending. For me, there are certainly essential services that we have to provide. First among them is law enforcement. We have responsibility to the courts, to the the prison. There's also several other departments. But it's interesting that you mentioned this because right now we're having a conversation about pay structure. We've got an issue or concern that we have difficulty in some areas attracting quality candidates and keeping them there. So we're having that conversation and we'll be making some adjustments. But part of that's going to be, yes, we do want to be able to attract and keep quality employees, but the trade-off will, well, for quality employees, we'll have to ask them to do more. We maybe do more with fewer employees.
Thank you.
We definitely cannot retain quality people with just over minimum wage salaries. People that are building inspectors that are out there are highly skilled, highly experienced professionals, barely, making under $22, $23 an hour. That's not good to pay. Individuals with CDLs, first-year drivers can go down with a CDL and work Graves Hardware, making far more than what our road department CDL drivers are making. I think once again it comes down to wasteful spending that's being put into programs that are not effective, or personnel that are not being effective. Those matrices must be in place to retain quality people, recruit quality people. Without those items, you just can't, once again, you can't throw more money at a problem or a situation and expect it to get better.
Thank you. Mr. Curtis?
So our county budget's just a little over 300 million, and there's a lot in there. And what I will say is I don't think we need additional taxes. I think we're going to see an influx of revenue coming in. We all received our assessments in the mail a few days ago, so the county's going to be, I think, be sitting good. I think where we as county commissioners, as a board, need to get creative is how do we find outside revenue sources that we as a county can put forward and have matched on a state level, matched on a federal level. And that is how you win. That is how you are strategic with large scale projects, infrastructure projects, projects that take time. We need matching funds, and that's what I would bring forward with some expertise.
Thank you. Ms. McKinney?
It was one of my highest priorities to make sure that we had great pay for great quality workers. We do have a limited budget, and to Ladon's point, you have to have a limited staff if you're going to increase. But I did request and we did approve a whole county pay study and pay reclassification that was conducted this last year. The results of which were provided to everyone last month. And obviously not able to talk into specifics, but we are beginning union negotiations. That is a tricky wicket because I come from private sector, 100% commission, and of course you would like to be able to maybe let those people move on who might not be performing to the highest standards, but when unions are involved, that is not always a possibility. So it is a tricky, interesting thing, but I would say that similar to what Kyle has said, that is exactly what we're pursuing. What I've been looking at is how are there opportunities to bring funds in from other sources, specifically the FBI, to address things like the gang and drug violence and partner with them.
That actually, well, sorry. I wanted to make sure everyone, he was starting his microphone, I was like, please don't get everybody. That was actually one of the questions that I thought I added, but it did deal with gun violence and just violent crime currently in the area. And it was along the lines of how, what can the county do, the Board of Commissioners, what can you do to utilize the resources to work both with local municipalities to address crime, as well as supporting to decrease some of those more violent violent crimes. I apologize, I wrote it down, but I don't have my notes on that one. But I definitely want to address the crime issue. So specifically, how would you address if you were selected dealing with crime specifically, or how do you feel like the board can support crime, reducing it?
So the crime center, that is a good start. Unfortunately, I think there's some operational, some control issues in regards to the program, the longevity of the finances for that. I also know the sheriff has been asking for deputies. They need almost 2 times the deputies that they currently have in the county. Departments have to work collaboratively together. When state patrol is in a pursuit down the freeway, they definitely need the support of those local municipality law enforcement agencies, and that's really where that working together with them comes together. The other slice of this whole thing is that individual responsibilities. More and bigger government's not always the answer. People that are, all these farms that are having all their equipment stolen, there are private security entities out there where you can hire your own employees to do that type of thing, and then individual protections with your Second Amendment. Your ultimate responsibility and your safety is up to you.
When we talk about crime, first and foremost, crime has to become illegal again. And a lot of the problems we see today is a result of our legislature and some drastic actions that they took, handcuffing our men and women who serve on the police force from doing their jobs, and that has got to change, and I hope it changes this new session. But dealing with it now, I think on a county level, the role that we play is we have to develop and implement a coordinated effort to combat not only the gang activity that we're seeing, but also the drug activity, the fentanyl that's come into our valley. And it has to be done in a countywide way. It has to be better coordinated. We have to share information between all of our separate jurisdictions, including the Yakima Nation. And then we need the federal government to come in and also help to curtail this problem before it becomes an even bigger issue.
Thank you.
The legislation is certainly a problem, but we have to find ways to work around it and to use it to our advantage. And so I've been working with Sheriff Udell and other partners within the agency at the Human Services at the county, because we do have the mental health and drug addiction sales tax, and I've been working very hard on systems intercept mappings for the last year to determine where the holes are and how we can use these funds. So Olympia wants us to get rid of deputies. We're not going to do that. We don't have the funds to hire new deputies, but we're going to use those funds to have designated crisis responders embedded with our deputies. We've had them before, and I'm massively advocating for those to come out in greater numbers so that when we have a crisis call, those deputies can arrive at the designated crisis responder who can deal with the mental issues that person is facing right then in the moment, and that frees our deputy up to go and help you when someone's breaking into your home or roughing up your child. We're going to fight it using the methods they've given us. Thank you.
Well, to start with, as a county, I'm very happy to say that I was an instrument in pushing the crime lab funding forward for our county. This is a unique opportunity. We have every city but one who's gotten on board with it, along with the Yakima Nation. And even though the city council Yakima hasn't joined us yet, I'm hoping they will in the future. I know there are supporters on that council. And I also know that the business community thought enough about the idea of the regional crime lab that they've actually volunteered to put forward the money for the first year of funding for the city of Yakima. So certainly the city of Yakima's businesses understand the vital role that this can play. It's just one piece, though. Drugs are a huge driver of the crime in this area. One of the things that has been harmful to that, I think, is some state legislation which has loosened and actually will legalize a lot of the drugs here. We need to push back on that and get the momentum changed on that, so that once again, drugs they're legal, and as I said before, crime is illegal. We get at least the tools that they need to operate and protect us.
Thank you, sir. All right. I want to say thank you for providing us some really great questions from the audience tonight. Since we are talking a little bit about the crime and violence, I want to shift gears a little bit. I did find my question. I apologize. It was the next question. So I digress. So we'll skip now to the water utility, an issue that is important to so many of us here in Yakima County. The Yakima County Water Resources System, the well water metering, is a concern for county residents, impacting both CWHPA and YAR members. Citizens in the county feel the current commission has ignored citizen input. If re-elected or elected, what would you do differently than the current commissioner board? What would you have done, or what will you do to address voters' concerns? What research alternatives have you found to address the water shortage issue and relieve citizens of this burdensome environment?
My turn, right?
Yep.
All right. So, the water issue became an issue right after the Hearst decision. So the county's hands were tied. Well, and the way the county moved forward with implementing and rolling out, it wasn't done correctly. I think moving forward, the county needs to do a better job of engaging with all stakeholders and ensuring that those communications and those dialogues are happening, and they're happening often. No one wants to be blindsided. As far as solutions, we do need reservoirs, we need water storage. And I think, all of us in the county, we're sick and tired of study after study after study and not seeing any action. The time is now, we need action. Also, the county can get a little bit creative in securing additional water rights by looking at unused parcels and potentially turning them into conservation districts so that we can then get additional water rights to help curtail the issue.
Ms. McKinney, your turn.
Well, I agreed wholeheartedly that the way it was implemented was erroneous. It should have been done that way. There wasn't enough transparency in the process or input. And so I embarked to make a difference. And so I actually have been meeting very regularly for the last year with the Association of Realtors and the Farm Bureau and the home builders to come up with their suggestions on how to update the ordinance so that we could make it less egregious and infringe on property rights, because we're talking about exempt wells, which is less than 1% of water use. But with the idea that that's a short-term solution. We need to replace it with a long-term solution. And as Kyle just said, we actually have been very proactively and have already purchased water and are looking at using funds from ARPA grants to purchase water. And there's some irrigation districts that are selling. So we're going to take advantage of that. We've already purchased some water. We've already been able to open up places that were previously closed. And I'm going to keep on doing it.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Lindy?
Yeah, and I wouldn't say that we have been indifferent to the concerns expressed about this. Commissioner McKinney mentioned she's been attending these, the meetings with the Farm Bureau, the realtors and home builders. And it's not that we're not sympathetic. We can only send one commissioner at a time, but I'm fully in support of what she's done there. We are looking at solutions where we can move away from this, but they are a little complicated. They could be expensive. One option is to look at using the ARPA funds for purchasing some water rights. This is going to become a larger issue than it is right now, I'm afraid, because right now it's an issue of unincorporated Yakima County. But even the cities, at some point, their appropriations of water is also going up. It'll become much bigger than it is right now. So I'm a little concerned about that. We have to be able to think ahead. Storage is an important part of it. We unfortunately had a project recently, the Weimer project, that's been our #1 priority for years. It went by the wayside, and it's no longer an option. So we have to look for other options for storage. They're probably going to be more but smaller storage opportunities.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Saunders?
This water issue is definitely disenfranchised a lot of farmers and a lot of people, home builders across the county. Definitely outdoor belly. It is definitely a top priority. Some of these areas, homelessness isn't really the issue that they're seeing in the rural areas, but they see a lot of money being spent towards that problem. Yet, not a lot of money was bought or forethought in regards to the water programs. So that is definitely a point of contention, as we all know. And it really comes down to that communication within the community, within the lower valley especially. They are very upset that water is the lifeblood of agriculture, which is the lifeblood of this entire valley. And without that, government overstepping and courts legislating from the bench is just not acceptable.
Thank you, sir. A little bit of a shift on water. This is a question from our audience. How are you addressing the Army regarding water contamination to protect homeowners that have been affected? Some homeowners have yet to be notified.
Did you say Army and leave it Yakima Training Center?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Sorry. How are you addressing the Army Training Center regarding the water contamination to protect homeowners who have been affected? Some have not yet been notified.
All right.
No pressure.
I got this one. So this is because the Yakima Training Center is part of the Department of Defense, and the Department of Defense has invoked CERCLA. And CERCLA means that other agencies and organizations cannot circumvent what the Department of Defense has decided to do. If anyone has not been notified, that would be something they would want to take up with Yakima Training Center and let us know. We can connect you with them. But they have reached out to the folks that they are in the testing. They've done 3 rounds of testing so far, and they've notified the owners who had wells that tested above the rate. Now, there is a difference here because we have a state rate and we have a federal rate. And what I can say also is that, the federal government has just allocated through Congress $65 million for PFAS remediation, but they don't yet know, even at the federal level, how to remediate this. They don't know how to filter it. This is something that's very new. The science has not caught up with the issue, and we're continuing to press them on that, and even the state is doing so.
Yes, the PFAS issue, yes, the training center, the leadership there has kept us informed about it. They've held community meetings. I know that they started with a strategy of looking at the homes that are closest to the training center to start with, and they've kind of gone out gradually, trying to reach more homeowners. They've done tests to try to establish the pattern of where this is flowing with the water. I know they walk door to door to try to get information to everybody within these circles. And as Commissioner McKinney said, if anybody else has a concern about it, which they very well might, then they certainly can contact the training center for help. If they ask us, we'll get them connected with them.
Thank you.
PFAS out there, I was up at the trading center when this whole thing came down. And I really don't have a whole lot to expand on this, other than, once again, it's ironic that our water issues continue to be the real main issue is the lack of communication to the residents. It took a long time before they were notified, the residences around YTC in regards to the PFAS. It was a lot, months and months of meetings on how to address it, what needed to be done at the federal level before that was even pushed down to the residents, which I thought was rather appalling, quite honestly. But it wasn't quite my lane at that time. But once again, it's just communication and how that information is pushed out.
Thank you.
The only other thing I'll add is it's bureaucracy at its finest, right? Like we see multiple agencies involved and everyone's pointing fingers. Someone has to take responsibility. Someone has to take the lead to get answers and to get resolution. And I think, unfortunately, we're not seeing that, but it's government at its finest. If elected, I would do everything I could to try to at least find a point person or streamline it so the resolution comes quicker.
Great, thank you guys. So we're going to pivot back a little bit more to a specific homeowner issue. Let's see here, I have one. With the current pace of construction in Yakima County, the permit process has gotten longer, unfortunately. There are only 2 inspectors currently working in the county, and this person has been told that it's due to Yakima wages not being competitive enough to retain employees. So the question here would be, would you support a full audit of the money that the county spends and reallocate funds to ensure that our county services, roads, and sheriff's office receive the funding to operate at full capacity? I think that's back to you, Mr. Whitney.
Well, certainly, I'm always open to an audit. An audit, we need to be transparent the way the money is used. Try to review that regularly, but actually, we have audits that are undertaken by the state on a regular basis. So, from the, I would say regarding the wages that were mentioned, yeah, that is an issue which we're actively addressing, as Commissioner Katie mentioned earlier, and I mentioned earlier. We're working on a salary survey. We've got that completed. Can't talk about negotiations at this point, but we're working in the direction of trying to be able to put our salary structure in a position where we can attract quality employees and keep them.
Great, thank you, sir. Mr. Saunders.
I don't have a whole lot to add to this other than I can appreciate the struggles that the commissioners would have in regards to the unions and the collective bargaining agreements and how their hands are tied in regards to that. How you hold an employee accountable that's not meeting the standards or not doing their job. And on top of all that, the wage discrepancies. It has to be very difficult thing to deal with. But they're working on it, and at least they're heading in that right direction. But I don't really know what the answer is to that.
Thank you, sir.
In regards to auditing funds and whatnot, I mean, our county, we go through an audit every year under the state auditor's office, and we pass. So I mean, those findings are always available to the public. In regards to hiring and finding talent, it's not government that's experiencing this alone. We experience it in the private sector. And the way that we have in our businesses combated it is we have to be innovative, right? We have to look at the current market trends, what type of work-life balance, what type of extra things can be offered to attract and retain these individuals. I think, unfortunately for the county, we shot ourselves in the foot by not adjusting wages annually. I think moving forward, that's something we're going to have to be realistic with ourselves and make sure that we budget for and keep and retain great folks. Another thing I will say is if we have jobs that haven't been filled for the last 3 years, 2 years, maybe it's an opportunity to look at software and technology and enhance our processes so that we may not need to bring in those additional folks.
Great, thank you. Ms. McKinney.
We've done those things, which is great to say. So a lot of our department heads have not been able to fill those roles. And to the specific question about the inspectors, it is something that's across industries, and it is incredibly difficult. So we have been thinking outside of the box as much as we can in constraints with collective bargaining. We can't just decide to change things. Every department can't be on their own. So we're working very hard on that, and I wish I could provide more insight That will come out in the next couple of months. But we are doing those things to be thinking outside of the box. I would also say that it is important for recruiting, and one thing that I've been really trying to work hard on is morale. I think it's good to have employees who take pride in working for the county and in providing that great service. When we have customer complaints, there's a balance when you own a business. You want to back your employees up, and the customer's always right. So finding that balance is incredibly important. I take that to heart. I think we have incredible people who work at the county, and we want them to feel empowered to do a great job and be proud of the job that they're doing, and people will see that. So I think turning around the mindset of what it's like to receive services and be working at the county is important.
Great, thank you so much for your response. All right, we talked a little bit about the building code, which, by the way, if you didn't know, tomorrow, make a quick plug, there are several building code hearings happening here in Yakima. So if you have any questions about building code, please see me afterwards. So this question is also from the audience, specifically about the building code. If you could change one thing in our current, zoning code, not building, what would it be and why? I think it's you, Mr. Saunders.
Was it zoning?
Zoning, yes, not building specifically.
I know one of the things that I'm seeing out there in regards to zoning is like the agricultural areas. A lot of folks, and actually as you doorbell out there, you can see that a lot of folks have just ignored the zoning and the codes and the ordinances that have been put in place because they feel that they're unreasonable. Lots of people feel that the county, the state has overstepped their bounds in regards to what people can do with their private property. And a lot of people are just doing what they want to do anyway. However, at the same time, you see kids or a mother-in-law type thing that's been established in a garage where they have that person housed and they're taking care of them. You know, that type of thing. I think what it really comes down to is less restrictions in regards to what people can do with their property.
So I had the opportunity to serve 2.5 years on our Yakima County Planning Commission. Through that service, it has allowed me to dive deep into planning codes in the Yakima County Code, specifically the growth management. The question was, what would you change? I wish we could get rid of the growth management now, because that would kind of solve a lot of the issues that individuals regarding property rights are experiencing today. The county passed the 2040 Horizon Plan in 2017. We have an opportunity in this new term to reassess that and take a look at it. I think there's a lot of changes that are happening in the valley, and we're going to have to spend quite a bit of time to be strategic in how we predict the growth of our county and planning and zoning.
Thank you, sir. Ms. McKinney.
I saw another opportunity when I joined the Commissioners Board to really talk about this and be proactive and make changes. So one of those changes was our agritourism and our finance tourism distilleries. The codes pertaining to that haven't been updated in over 10 years. And if you've ever been to butterfly releases or yoga and you bring your dog and you're painting, those are all things that wineries, breweries, and distilleries do on their destination, not only about themselves. It's about entertainment, and our zoning and codes weren't keeping up with the reality. And so how do we encourage those types of businesses to flourish while also respecting of their neighbors in rural settings? And so I worked very hard with staff and all the stakeholders, and we now have a proposed ordinance update, which is going to go through the hearing commission process within the planning commission and eventually up to the commissioners. But it's seeing those and actually being proactive, meeting with stakeholders, coming to a decision on what are going to be positive updates, and then seeing it through. So I look forward to seeing that one through too.
Great, thank you.
Well, I would just have to mention that the Growth Management Act is problematic. It lacks some flexibility, so I agree with Kyle on that. Commissioner McKinney kind of stole my thunder because I was going to talk about the ag tourist operation, but it is an interesting thing, and you see our economies evolve over time, where the wineries at first were just like a tasting room, and that was it. And now they've evolved to the point where you're having some of the things that Amanda mentioned, as well as concerts and issues of housing and all that. And so it kind of becomes, we want to be pro-business, we want to encourage development. We also have to be respectful to the zoning and the fact that when people move into that property, they have a certain expectation. So we've got to keep the neighbors in mind as well. So it's balancing.
Great, thank you.
one of the short-term fixes to our housing supply issues was this idea of tiny homes. And so I am in support of tiny homes, but when it comes to addressing our homelessness crisis, I don't know that tiny homes is the answer. I think that accountability is the number one thing that comes to mind when I think of tiny homes. Who's going to ensure that these places are safe? Who's going to ensure that there's no illegal conduct occurring in these homes? So it would be something that, for me as a county commissioner, I would have to really see a well thought out plan of how these tiny homes are going to fix our homelessness problem and not grow our homeless problem.
Thank you, sir. Ms. McKinney.
My answer is going to sound very similar. Washington State has taken a housing first look at solving homelessness, and I disagree wholeheartedly. We have to treat the individual and get them restored to feeling self-worth and self-value, retaining and building relationships, getting their jobs back, and those types of things before we look at having those housing options. We mentioned the growth management act. Obviously, there are things to consider as far as population density, where you want to put it. We're concerned about safety aspects. And so there is a possibility, but we need to make sure that we're looking at treating the person who's experiencing these issues. To your point, you want a tiny home, there's lots of opportunities out there to have something that might not be in the scenario that we're maybe talking about here. But again, the building codes in the state of Washington might prohibit a little bit of what you're wanting.
Thank you.
Yes, I would say tiny homes is something that we can look at, but it's certainly not going to be the total solution. Perhaps it could be part of the solution, but for the reasons that I've already mentioned, there are concerns about worrying about accountability, criminal activity. And again, we get back to the homeless issue. In the end, it's back to not just changing someone's location. You solve the problem because you put a roof over their head, but it's what have you done to change their conditions so that they actually are able to overcome addictions, overcome bad choices they've made in their life, getting the help to do things like become employable, and again, contribute to their own, becoming self-sufficient.
Thank you, sir.
I think that agricultural tourism in regards to tiny homes is definitely one issue. Quite honestly, I don't think it's the government or the county or the state's position to tell you you can't put something like that on your property, especially if you're educating a lot of the people that are touring to our areas about water and about farming and those types of things. A lot of these things that we see in the media and see in the news in regards to those issues is because of the lack of education. People don't understand about the water, and we don't have any of the agriculture we have here. And people just don't have any understanding. In regards to homelessness, I don't think tiny homes for the most part, unless they are prescribed into a contract to abide by the rules and have to check in, have to go to treatment, have to go to work and seek work skills, then that might be acceptable. But at the same time, homelessness, sleeping out by the river is not an answer. And putting somebody in a nice FEMA type tent instead of sleeping out there is more humane than anything else.
Thank you, sir. All right. We've got another question from our audience in regards to water. In what ways, as commissioner, could you help with water right problems?
I'm sorry, water what?
Water rights problems.
Well, I'm going to have to assume what water rights problems that we're talking about here. So if this goes back to well meter which I would consider water rights issues. So we're opening up areas that were previously closed due to the mitigation that has been required of us from the Washington State Department of Ecology. So trying to find a way to take those rules that have blocked off water for our residents and bring them back. I actually just received a really heart-wrenching letter from a man who lives in UMass, and his wife is in stage 4 cancer, and they are wanting to retire there, and they live in one of the areas that was closed off, and it happens to be one of the areas that we very soon are going to be able to reopen, because we did go ahead and purchase funds so that we could get those water rights, so we could mitigate and open that area up. So we're definitely listening, always looking for ways to resolve those issues and help people, because it's really important.
Great, thank you. Mr. Lee.
Yeah, no, it sounds like a broken record.
Well, you guys work together,
Yes.
so.
Yeah, but yes, we would look at the water code. We're actually happy to say that a couple areas in the county that have been closed to drilling. We've invested some funds, and we think in the not too distant future really close, we'll be able to come up with developing anything. And then other than that, we actually have taken some of the ideas that have come and some of the meetings that Commissioner McKinney's come and attended with interested parties. We actually have, in the not too distant future, we'll also be looking at the white CWRS code, trying to update it, make it more flexible. It's not a permanent solution, but it is a step in the right direction.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Saunders.
Yeah, we definitely hear in the lower valley in regards to your irrigation water rights, senior water rights, things like that. It's an issue down there, but a lot of times those same areas are relying on the wells to pull that water. If we're going to meter and require metering, the state's the one that wants that, they should have to pay for that and put it in there to evaluate the usage of those waters. But it's a tricky and a slippery slope in regards to that becoming a utility in the future. That's what people are really afraid of.
Thank you, sir.
Everything I would say has pretty much already been said. We on the county level, we have to be strategic in securing additional water rights. And again, I think turning some parcels into conservation in the name of conservation is one strategic move. Another thing is building water storage. And I will say that we as a county cannot depend upon the federal government to fund 100% of this project. This is going to be something we have to do on a local and state level. And I also would say I don't necessarily trust the federal government that they would ever complete a project. I mean, you just have to look at the Columbia River Basin project, started in the 1940s and it's still going.
Thank you. Our next question is not about water. It is about the current airport. The Yakima Airport is down to only one flight per day to Seattle, while the Pasco Airport continues to grow business. What would you propose as next steps for the county in making decisions on airport funding, land use, development, and management? AKA, how do we get more flights today? I think that I've lost track now. I'm so sorry. I'm a terrible moderator. Is it you, Kyle?
Thank you.
I just answered, but I don't, also. I think that the airport should be back under the control.
I went first. It's the second part.
Yeah.
Okay. So sorry. I'm so sorry. Newbie. Coded brain. Sorry. Pardon me. Continue,
Okay,
Mr.
sure.
Lindsay.
Okay. Well, listen, one option to consider is, I know this is being talked about, is looking at a port district to be able to fund and support the airport. And it's something that you can use to kind of sustain and even subsidize the airport to promote flights while they're trying to get up to speed and getting people using those flights. From local experience, I'm from Sunnyside, and I can tell you from our local experience that port districts can do great things for economies, for local economies. We've been able to, Sunnyside and Grandview both have port districts, and they both have been able to use them effectively, bringing in businesses, bringing in good wages and good jobs to a community. So I think that might be an option that can be looked at in this instance as well.
Great. Thank you, sir. Alrighty, Mr. Saunders, didn't mean to cut you off there. Give you a few extra seconds to think through your words.
Definitely the air terminal and the airport needs to be back and more under control of the county instead of the city, especially with flights that are coming in and out of there in regards to immigration and things like that. I know that was a big concern a couple of years ago, and there was a lot of debate in regards to closing down and not allowing those flights to come in. That's a regional asset, that's a county asset. I think they should go back under control of the county. And then also, yes, that being an important authority makes far more sense than being under control of the city. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
So yes, I think a port district is an option, and I think it's one that makes sense. I think when you look at all of the neighboring airports that we have, success stories, you have Pasco, you have Moses Lake. Why are they successful? It's because they have port districts. Port districts allow an airport to do some really cool and interesting things that otherwise you're not going to be able to do under the county and or the city. One other thing I will add is for folks that say, well, we don't really need an airport in Yakima. We do need an airport in Yakima. I think as our population continues to grow, it's going to become an even greater need. I mean, I says a lot when you have efforts on the west side of the state there trying to locate the next SeaTac airport because it's outgrown. It's just a reality. Yakima need and can contain an airport.
Thank you, Ms. McKinney.
This was something that I actually was involved with on the YCDA, and Kyle actually as well. We volunteered on the subcommittee to actually pursue court districts and toured court districts all over the state to look specifically at the successes that were derived for their airports. Pasco is a prime example. It is subsidized. Whether or not that's exact answer, it remains to be seen. But it is something that we have to invest in. I would love to buy the airport back from the city. I'll give you $2 since you bought it from us for $1. But I do think the city, working with the city collaboratively is very important. So I actually knew that this is something that the city was working hard on and advocated on their behalf to our congressional delegates in Congress to earmark this is the #1 priority, which was a $5 million investment in the terminal. I recently met with Councilman Matt Brown, who traveled to DC and met with the FAA. So we're staying in close contact on that. But they are looking, the FAA is looking at doing some major improvements to the runway. But that's just a start. So highly supportive and collaborative is going to be important.
Thank you, ma'am. It's a personal issue to me, and I'm sure many folks at home would love to see more flights coming in. So my question, as my last question for tonight, I'd like to give you guys actually a little bit longer since we do have some extra time. So Shelley, we'll allow them an extra 30 seconds to answer this question. So this is looking forward. What changes do you see Yakima County will face in the next 5 to 10 years? And how do you plan to address them if you're elected? So this is a little bit different than, closing remarks, but I want to give you guys a little bit more time to really think about where you want the county to go forward. So I think it's your turn, Mr. Saunders.
We are definitely going to be, with the open borders right now, we are definitely going to be dealing with the immigration issue. With that immigration, or illegal immigration, we're going to definitely be dealing with cartels. I think we have drug and gang problems now, just look on your seats because it's coming. Law enforcement knows it, Border Patrol knows it, votes matter. Your stance on that definitely matters. We have to be ahead of the race on this thing because if we don't have some solutions in place, if we don't have collaboration, stakeholders, and more individual and property owner accountability for solutions, not just expecting the government to solve all these problems, that's just not going to happen. We've already seen that that's not going to happen. Bigger government, throwing more money at the problems, restricting people's property rights or their ability to protect themselves is not the answer. It's continue to fail, continue to fail. And with that, we are going to see, especially if we get water figured out, the expansion of agriculture in these areas. There's lots of fertile ground out here. It just needs water and people to work in. So housing and then crime would be the
Thank you, sir. All right, Mr. Bruce.
Yeah, this is always something that's in my mind because I know as a county commissioner, the decisions we make have drastic impact, not necessarily at that moment, but 5, 10, 15 years down the road. And so when I think of Yakima County, what it looks like down the road, it's still an agricultural community. Today, 27% of all of our jobs in the county are tied directly to agriculture. And there's an additional 30% that are auxiliary jobs, such as freight, brokers, what have you, that are also tied to ag. So ag is our backbone and ag will always be here. But what we will begin to see and already have is a transition in our ag community, utilizing technology because the technology will be cheaper than hiring and employing folks at the current wage. So that's one opportunity that I see. I'm also excited for that because in regards to population of folks under the age of 23, Yakima County has the highest population of young people, but we also have the highest net migration. Young people grow up here, they leave, but they never return. And why is that? A lot of that has to do with jobs. Another thing that has been big on my mind is the governor and the legislature have been pushing on EV, right? EV vehicles and EV infrastructure. Well, if we're following California, we're going to need 25% more power added to the grid. There's no room on the west side of the state. Their eyes are going to be looking at Yakima Yakima County and the east side to put up windmills and solar. So we're going to have to be strategic and making sure that we set ourselves up for success, to have that local control and make those decisions for ourselves.
Thank you. Oh, great, thank you. Ms.
That was
McKinney.
a cue up if I could have ever asked.
Right?
It is the green energy, and that includes green energy policies out of Olympia that are really sabotaging the efforts that even the State Department of Ecology has given to the Office of the Columbia River Basin to aggressively pursue water storage. So the Weimer Reservoir was something that was the #1 priority as designated by the Department of Ecology. It was going to be $150 million to create that reservoir. It was already planned and studied, and they backed out because they got an offer from a solar farm that they couldn't pass up. So our biggest issues right now is that Olympia is trying to turn eastern and southern Washington into a solar farm dump. And so we have to know that the highest and best use of our land, and you touched on this, is for agriculture, future expansion. This land didn't look this way 100 years ago. So we are going to have to store water so we can expand irrigation, because we are one of the few places in the United States that does have fertile land that has yet to be turned into fertile land for growing. And we will be looked to feed the nation. And we have the foresight in Central Washington to know we're going to get the call. And we over here will rise to the occasion, but it's only going to be because we stand up and say, we're not going to let you do this. So to that point, when I found out that they were using FSEC to go around us locally, I suggested, and the Board of County Commissioners passed a solar moratorium. And then we moved to change the type review for solar farms from a 3 hearing examiner to 4 for a Board of County Commissioner review, so that you get to say, as our elected officials are supposed to rip your voice. And now we're looking at pushing back on the state and other avenues. So there are ways to be vigilant. We have to be vigilant. And that's what I'm looking forward to doing.
Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate you all providing responses. I know you're making some notes here. No problem with that. Everyone's encouraged to make notes. Mr. Levine.
Thank you. Well, water is looking ahead. Water is a big issue in our future. We simply have to have water to be able to maintain what we have and to be able to grow. As someone who was a farmer years ago who lived on a junior irrigation district, I knew what that was like to have a drought and not have water and to have a crop dry. The only thing we could do with our water was to sell those rights to someone else in the hope that they could somehow use that to be able to have a supplement what they already had to be able to keep their crops alive. So water is a big issue moving forward. We've got to support growth in agriculture as well as growth for our housing and our businesses. Safety, for us to be able to grow those sites from water level, we're going to have to be able to ensure public safety. There are some challenges that have been mentioned that we're dealing with now. I'm afraid they could grow. It's very likely. But we have to be able to fully fund law enforcement. We have to continue to seek ways to collaborate together with local law enforcement and get participation from the state and federal government. One thing I'm pretty happy about was that recently I was able to move work with the tribe, the Yakima Nation, so that we could actually approach the federal government with a joint letter working together, asking Congress or a congressional delegation for federal support for law enforcement efforts on the reservation, not just for the tribal police, but for the sheriff's office as well, because it's badly needed in both accounts. Also, clean communities are a big issue as far as encouraging growth.
Thank you, sir. All right, so we have one more question that came in last minute from our wonderful audience, so thank you all for your participation tonight. This last question coming from the audience, we'll go back to that 1 minute. So thank you all. I appreciate your astounding responses. So timer for this one, we'll be back to the 1 moment. What would you like to see done with the Boise Cascade Mill site? And I believe it is your turn, Kyle.
Yeah, so Boise Cascade site, I'm 30 years old and I'm told that this has been a project we've been trying to figure out for 30 years. So I don't want to see it take another 30 years because something needs to happen. I think it could be, one thought comes to mind is like a casino, but I don't think that that's a possibility at this time. But it is, we need additional hotels. I would like to see additional retail. I think it's a prime location and there's going to be a lot of interest for growth and to really show and display the Yakima Valley. I think we can do that in a creative way.
Thank you, sir. Ms. McKinney.
Well, the East-West Corridor Bridge is going to come through there, and I think it's a wonderful opportunity for us to involve the Greenway, which is, there are already discussions about that, and having an entrance to the Greenway there, which would increase traffic on the Greenway and exposure, and have that park setting there because the Sunrise Rotary Club recently updated their park. So seeing a big building in the back, I think would be incredible if we could have a giant Titus Market type feel. There's opportunities to have some ponds there. There's a riverfront there that we can connect to. If anyone's been to Bend, I think the old mill site there is a great opportunity. There's a movie theater. You can have housing, condo styles, but we can have retail. We can have all those things that really would highlight the very best of Yakima Valley. So when people drive through Yakima, they want to pull off and come say hi and spend some money. I appreciate that answer. Thank you. Mr. Lindy.
Yes. Well, that is something that's part of the East-West Corridor project that has already been mentioned, has been developed for quite a while. We're making progress on that as the infrastructure moves out that way. One problem that came up recently was the fact that it was discovered there had been a landfill out there in the 50s or 60s, or both, and that had to be cleaned out completely so that it could be built on. But I agree that the idea is that since it's right there on the freeway near the Yakima River, it'd be a great opportunity to make it a showcase for Yakima with the right kind of business, hospitality related industries. That would be, in my mind, a really good.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Saunders.
I like roller coasters.
Oh, me too.
That's all I was.
Okay. Thank you for your candid response. Alrighty, guys. I really want to appreciate everyone. We've got one final question, actually more like closing remarks. So I believe it is you, Ms. McKinney. You'll have 1 minute and 30 seconds to provide any last rebuttal or any other comments you want to circle back to that maybe you haven't had a chance to highlight already in these conversations, but your time to shine, 1 minute and 30 seconds.
I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to serve you. When I was elected 2 years ago, it was because I promised that I'd bring transparency and proactiveness and results. I've delivered on those results, but I'm just getting started. I think it's a unique opportunity after just 2 short years to run again, but I'm up to the challenge to continue. I'm thankful for my family and their support, but there are a lot of things that I've been able to proactively do, either to stop bad things from happening or to start things changing and churning those wheels. I've gotten a lot of support from inside the county, and generally I get a response from people when I call back or email back that no one's ever done that before. You're a different kind of commissioner, and I am a different kind of commissioner. I think it's an incredible opportunity to have this job, and I'm really looking forward to continuing what I've started for the next 4 years, and I'm asking for your vote in November. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Lindy.
Yes, thank you. Well, first of all, I'd like to say thank you for hosting this candidate forum tonight, giving us the opportunity to express our views on different positions and questions that have come our way. It's been an honor to serve in this position, and I'm seeking re-election this year. It's been good. One of the bright stars, or one of the bright things that I've seen as I've been around the county talking to people within the county. We've got a lot of good people that actually work for the county. There are things to improve on. One of the things that I've sought to implement is the idea that we actually have an annual performance evaluation for employees. It's not as common as you might think or hope in county government, but we're working in that direction. I think we're making some progress in some areas in regards to getting the mindset of being a customer service related entity as county government. There's more work to do there. But in the end, I've got to say something that although there's responsibility that public officials, whoever they are, have, there's also a responsibility for individuals. And I want to share this story that I saw recently. There's a man by the name of Clayton Christensen, who is a professor at the Harvard Business School, or was at least until he passed away recently. He told about a conversation that he had with a Chinese Marxist economist who had come from China on a Fulbright fellowship. And at the end of his time there, he asked if there was anything that he saw that surprised him. He said, yeah, I had no idea how critical religion was to the functioning of democracy, because people learned to voluntarily follow the law on their own. They felt that they were accountable not just to society, but accountable to God. We saw that was a great secret of good functioning of democracy.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. And Mr. Saunders.
So I was, as many of you know, I was perfectly content being retired from the military down on our little hobby ranch and just enjoying the property and enjoying my neighbors. what I did notice is that it wasn't just people who were upset, frustrated at the national level. They're definitely frustrated at the state level and even the county level in regards to property rights, government overreach, government being in their pockets, not understanding the Constitution, not taking into regard our faith, and then ultimately just not feeling like they were being represented by their elected officials. It's the same thing I was feeling. So, in the last hours is when I decided to run and declare candidacy for the county commissioner for the Lower Valley, and that's because I felt the same way as many of the people that I'm out here door knocking are feeling. They're frustrated, they want the communication back and forth, and they don't feel like they're being represented and they're not being listened to. And so I know that I'm a fighter. I've spent my entire career fighting, being a public servant, not afraid to speak out, not afraid to build teams, and that's definitely what we're planning and prepared to do collaboratively across, especially Lower Valley, and working with the other commissioners to get things done.
Thank you, sir. And Mr. Curtis.
Yeah, I will say Yakima is home, born and raised here, and I love Yakima, and I want to give back. One way I see myself giving back is being a problem solver for the county. And in this role, that's exactly the mindset that I have, is I'm tasked with solving problems, not making excuses, but bringing solutions, finding solutions, and engaging with the community and stakeholders. I'm very passionate about it. The last 5 years, I've had the opportunity to look at a lot of issues and go really far into the weeds to understand the issues. I know on the county commissioner level, a lot of the times, because we're dealing with so many different items, you're not able to do that. So I think I bring a fresh mindset, some new energy, and someone who's going to make this a 24/7 job every single day. Because as you know, to be a leader, you have to constantly be out there, be engaged, and your mind's always going. Thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you. And I want to say finally, thank you all for your attention and appreciation. If you guys could just join me in a quick round of applause for our candidates tonight. That will conclude our evening. As a reminder, don't forget to vote. That is coming up just around the corner. I believe, and hopefully you guys who I had I wrote down the dates specifically, and they're not always happy. So, anyways, second Tuesday in November.
It's
last
November
week.
8th,
Thank
November
you.
8th, ballots drop October 2nd.
Thank you, November 2nd. And you have 8 days before to register. I do know that much. So, as a newbie, I'm planning on hurrying up and getting my registration in as soon as possible. So, thank you again to our wonderful sponsors tonight, the Yakima Association of Realtors and the Central Washington Home Builders Association. If you guys have any questions, I know that our candidates would be happy to follow up with you afterwards. Don't forget, the Easter is still open. I'm planning on having a glass of wine myself. And cheers to our wonderful democracy for this wonderful event. Thank you so much.